welcome to this video. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your very own packing list. And the way this works is whatever you input here is going to automatically add titles for each of your 10 tables. So this can be clothing, and then this can be electronics. And as you can see, immediately those labels were updated up here. And then as you start checking off items from your list, this progress bar moves, and then you can also see that progress over here. So if this is something you would like to learn how to create, you can keep watching. I'm gonna leave the link to the file in the description just in case you run into any issues and would like to check the formulas, or if you just don't want to follow the tutorial, that's totally fine. And this packing list is actually something that I pulled from one of my products. I pulled it from the Ultimate Travel Planner. It has other features, and one of them is that packing list. So I thought it had enough formulas for me to turn it into a tutorial. So I hope you like it, and I hope you find it useful. Let's get into it. Let's start on a blank tab, and as usual, I suggest that you do everything in the exact same cells that I'm doing it, just so if you run into any issues or have any questions, your file looks exactly as mine, so you can go back into it and check the formulas and maybe figure out what went wrong. So I'm going to start by creating this first table right here. So as you can see, there's 3 rows, and then there is 4 columns to this one table. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start on cell F1 on a blank tab, and we're going to input the number 1. And then you're going to select the next 3 cells, and you're going to merge them, and that's where our title is going to be. So right now I'm just gonna do a temporary one. So let's do clothing items. And then down here, this is where our progress bar will be. So first in this cell, we're gonna add a temporary percentage. So let's do 50%. And then we're gonna use the next 3 cells for the actual progress bar. So we're going to select them and then merge them together. And then this right here, these 4 cells, those are going to be our labels. So the first one is going to be packed. Then let's do quantity, then item, and finally some notes. Now let's select this and make it bolder. Now we're gonna add the checkboxes. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're going to click on this cell right here, cell F4. You're going to click and drag all the way down to maybe cell F40. So as you can see, this is what you have selected. You have selected a range from cell F4 to cell F40. You can totally make this longer, but just for the sake of the tutorial, this is as far as I'm gonna go. And then once you have selected this range, you're gonna click on Insert and checkbox. And right out of the box, if you click on it, you get the check mark, and then the value, as you can see up here, whenever I check it or uncheck it, the value is switching automatically. So we're gonna use that later. And right now, this is all aligned to the left, which I don't love. So I'm just gonna click on this square right here. So if you click on that, you select the entire sheet, and I'm just gonna center everything. So I'm gonna click on this align button, and I'm gonna choose center. And then I'm going to click on this vertical align button, and I'm going to choose middle. And then for the next one, I'm going to choose the option wrap. So this is something I do for every single one of my templates. Now, so it starts looking a bit better. I'm just gonna make this column a bit shorter, this one a bit shorter, since it's only expecting a number. Then maybe this one a bit longer and this one a bit longer. Now we're going to work on the progress bar. So as you can see, whenever you check a box, the progress bar moves automatically. So let's do that. And one very important feature about this one is that if you check or uncheck a box that doesn't have an item assigned to it, then nothing is going to happen. So for a row to be taken into consideration, there has to be a value in the item section. If there isn't, it's just going to ignore the checkbox. So let's keep that in mind and let's build that functionality. So let's add a few items over here. Let's do 2 pants, 3 dresses, 4 shirts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this percentage changes automatically whenever we are checking or unchecking boxes. And then we're going to use that percentage to create our actual progress bar. So it's just going to be a visual representation of whatever value we have here. But first we have to make sure this value is dynamic and connected to the actual checklist. So I'm just gonna add one more. Let's do 4 socks. So this is going to be a bit of a long formula, so I'm going to start over here with some examples. So a very quick reminder of how you get a percentage. You need two values. You need the number of checked boxes, and you don't have to follow along. This is just a quick example. I'll let you know when I'm actually working on the template. So you need to know the number of checked boxes, and then you need to know the number of total items. So let's say you have 5 checked boxes and then you have 10 total items. So your percentage would be calculated by dividing the number of checked boxes by the number of total items. So in this case, you get a decimal value, and if you click on this button right here, you can format it as a percentage. So if I were to add a 10 here, then I get 100%. If I add a 0, then I get 0%. If I add a 5, then that's half of total items, I get a 50%. So that's a quick reminder of how you get a percentage. So now let's translate that over here and connect them to our actual checkboxes and our actual item rows. So I'm just gonna get rid of everything I just did. So we're gonna add a formula over here. Let's delete this temporary value. And first we need to know the number of checked boxes. So we're gonna do equals count if, open parentheses, and we're gonna set first our range and then the criteria that it needs to meet. So our range is going to be everything from cell F4 to F40. That's all of our checkboxes. And the criteria that it needs to meet is that it has to be true. So when a box is checked, its value is true. And when it's not checked, its value is false. And then we need to divide that by our total number of rows. We need to know how many rows actually have items in them. So we're gonna do count F, and then the same thing, we're going to select our items range from cell H4 to H40. And then we're gonna do a comma, and the criteria that this one needs to meet is it has to have a value in it. It can't be empty. So I'm gonna do open quotations, and then the greater than and less than symbols, then close quotations and close parentheses. So what we have here, this part of the formula is letting us know how many boxes are checked, and then this part of the formula is letting us know how many rows have items in them. So if I press enter on my keyboard, I'm gonna get 0, and as soon as I start checking boxes, then my percentage is going to increase. Now, there is one issue with this formula, and it's the fact that if I go on and check boxes that don't actually have items in them, then my percentage is also going to increase. And we don't want that, so we're gonna make one addition to the formula. In here, we want our number of checked boxes to increase whenever the box is checked, but we also want it to meet a second criteria. We want it to increase when the box is checked and when there is actually an item in here. So let's check a couple of boxes. That change is going to happen in this part of the formula, and right now we only have one criteria being met. So in order to have two criteria being met, we have to change the formula and actually use count ifs with an S at the end instead of count if. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that to my formula, just to the very first one. So it's gonna be count ifs, my checkboxes are checked, and I'm going to select my item range from cell H4 to H40. Then I'm gonna add a comma, and the criteria is that there has to be a value in here. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did over here, greater than, less than. So now two conditions have to be met for my counter, my checked boxes counter to increase. This has to be checked and there has to be an item in here. So now if I press enter, this goes down to 100% because it's not caring about these other ones, because these other ones don't actually have any items in them. So I'm gonna uncheck everything, and I'm going to highlight this once more so you can check it out. And if you're curious about these formulas, if you select them and then you press on this question mark right here, you're going to get some help. And then if you click on this arrow over here, you're going to expand details. So it's going to give you a lot of information about the formula, and then you can click on learn more. And then this is going to pop up, and then it's going to give you syntax and examples. In case you need a little bit more of an explanation, you have that available. So now we're going to create our progress bar. And the formula that I'm going to use is the sparkline formula. So I'm just going to select the place where my progress bar should be, and I'm going to do equals sparkline, open parentheses. And I suggest that you click on this question mark over here And then you click on this arrow just to make sure that depending on your country, your formatting and your syntax looks the same as mine. And if it doesn't, you can just use this to adapt your formula depending on your country. So the first value that you have to do is you have to give it your dynamic percentage. So I'm just going to go ahead and right after the parentheses, I'm going to click on our percentage value, which will highlight cell F2. Then I'm going to do a comma. I'm going to open brackets. I'm going to open quotations, and then I'm going to type in the word chart type. Then I'm going to close quotations. I'm going to do a comma, and I'm going to give it the chart type that I want, which is going to be a bar. So open quotations, bar, close quotations. Then I'm going to do a semicolon since I'm moving on to another set of values. Now I'm going to give it the maximum value of my chart. So that's going to be open quotations, max, close quotations, comma, and then I'm gonna do 100%. So the maximum value is 100% and my current value is this cell right here, which is going to change dynamically. And then I'm going to close brackets, and then I'm going to close parentheses, and I'm going to press enter. And that's gonna give you a progress bar that should move according to the boxes that you are checking. If everything's unchecked, then you shouldn't see anything in there. So we have our percentage, we have our progress bar. Now very quickly, I'm just gonna start giving it a little bit of formatting so it starts looking better. So I'm going to start by creating some borders. So I'm going to select my entire table. I'm going to click on this borders button. I'm going to select maybe this fifth gray, and then I'm going to make them a bit bolder by clicking on this border style over here and selecting the second one. And then I'm going to click on outer borders. And then maybe I'm going to select the header, just the header, and then do the same thing. Then I'm going to select this one row, the very first one, and I'm just gonna add a button border to it. Now I would like for these rows to be a bit taller, so I'm gonna select all three of them at the same time by clicking and dragging from the first one to the third one by clicking on the row number, and then I'm just gonna make them a bit taller. And then I'm going to change the background color. If you want this exact same one, you're going to click on fill color. You're going to click on this plus sign that says add custom color. And then you're going to copy this exact same value in this cell, this hex value. And once you do that, you click OK, and you're going to get that color. Then I'm going to pick a lighter one down here. I'm going to show you the value in a second. So I'm going to use that one. And again, you click on add custom color, and you can copy that light blue one. I'm going to make this font white. The percentage, I'm just gonna make a bit smaller. Let's do font size 9, and I'm going to click on italic, and then I'm going to change the color of my progress bar. And to do that, I'm going to add something into the formula. So right after the 100%, I'm going to add a semicolon before closing brackets. I'm gonna open quotations and type in the text color 1, close quotations, then I'm gonna do a comma, open quotations, and then I'm going to add a hex value of the color that I want my bar to be. Then I'm gonna close quotation, and you can look up online other hex values that you like and then change it later. So I'm just gonna press enter on my keyboard, and then that turned green. Now, as you may recall, this table is actually connected to each of these individual tables. So whenever I check a box over here, this progress bar is also moving, and whenever I change the name in here, it changes up here as well. So we're going to create that functionality, and we're going to start by creating the layout for this table. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on cell A5, and I'm going to drag to select 4 columns and 2 rows, and I'm going to merge them together. So I'm just going to add a title here. And then I'm going to click on cell A7, and I'm going to add the number 1. And then on cell A2, I'm going to add the number 2. And then if I select both of those and I click on this tiny circle right here and I drag all the way down to cell A16, I'm just going to get a sequence of numbers from 1 to 10. So I'm going to make that column a bit smaller. And then this one, that's going to hold my group names. So I'm just going to add a temporary one. This one is going to hold my percentage. So I'm just going to make this smaller and add a temporary percentage, and then this one is going to hold our small progress bar. And I'm gonna give it some formatting. I'm just gonna select everything from cell A5 to cell D16, and I'm going to wrap it on an outer border, the same one I had selected, 5th color from left to right, and then the second line style over here, and then I'm gonna click on outer border, and I'm just gonna give it a background. I'm gonna use this same one over here with a white font, and then for this ones, I'm going to use this same color with a black font. I'm going to get rid of the grid lines. That's something that I really like to do to all of my templates. I get rid of all of these grid lines over here and I add my own. So I'm going to click on View, Show, and then I'm going to click on Grid Lines. And as you can see, all of the grid lines disappeared. So I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. And I'm going to add my own inner grid lines. So I'm going to select everything from cell F4 to I40, this area over here. And I'm going to click on Borders. I'm going to select maybe this third gray, and then I'm going to click on inner borders. It's important that you use this one so you don't mess up the outer borders that we added previously. So inner borders, and I actually messed it up because I want those to be thinner. So I'm gonna select this line style that is thinner. It automatically changed. If it didn't, you can just click on inner borders again. And you have those, and I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm just gonna select this borders option and I'm gonna click on inner borders. And then I'm going to add a border over here, just so this that looks like it's overlapping disappears. So I'm just gonna select this title. I'm gonna click on borders. I'm going to select a white color, and then I'm just gonna click on bottom border. So that looks a bit better. I'm actually going to make this taller. So now that we have this, what I want to do is I want to make sure that whatever I type in here gets reflected over here. I'm going to make this bigger and bolder. So I'm just going to do 14 and then I'm going to make it bolder. So this number right here, it's the one that is going to tell me what value I should pull. So if I add the number 1, then I'm going to know that this is the value that I want. If my table has the number 2, then I'm going to know that this is a value that I want. Right now I'm going to add number 1. So to do that, I'm just going to click on my title. I'm going to delete that and I'm going to do equals. I'm going to use the formula Hlookup. So I'm going to type that, open parentheses, and the first thing that I need to tell my formula is what's going to be my search key. So my search key is going to be this cell right here that's going to hold the numbers from 1 to 10. So that's my search key. Then I'm going to do comma, and then I need to tell it the range in which I'm going to search. So that range is going to be this right here. Then I'm going to do a comma, then I'm going to do the index. So this range that I'm selecting, it has 2 columns. This is the first one and this is the second one. This first one is what's going to match my number, which is my search key. And my value is going to be found on the second one. So I'm going to add the number 2. Then I'm going to do a comma. And then this value, I need to let it know if these are sorted. I just like to say no, even though in this case it is sorted. But I always like to say no just in case. So I'm just going to do 0. That's the way I'm going to say it's not sorted. And then I'm going to close parentheses. So I press enter on my keyboard. I'm going to get this group name. And if I change it here, then it's changing automatically. So I'm just gonna make this a bit bigger and bolder. I'm gonna do font 13 and I'm just gonna click on bold. Now, as you may recall, this is our index. So this is what's allowing us to match our values to this table. So if I add something else here, let's call this row 2, and then I change this to the number 2, that's the value that I'm gonna get. And then again, do example, if I add the number 10 over here, then that's the value that I'm gonna get. So this is what's allowing me to very easily pull the values from these rows accordingly. So I'm just gonna bring it back to 1. If I were to select this entire area, copy it, and then paste it over here, I'm gonna make this smaller, you get an error over here. And the reason for that is that if you look at this formula, you have the range from A7 to B16. But after I copied and pasted it, since I didn't fix it to this range, it switched to a different range. So there is one thing that we need to add to our formula so that doesn't happen. I'm gonna undo my changes. I'm gonna go back to the formula and I'm gonna fix the formula to this range. So no matter how many times I copy it and paste it, this will remain the same. So you're gonna select any part of the range and then you're gonna press F4 on your keyboard. And what this is doing is actually adding these dollar signs right before the column and right before the number. And it's doing that for both of these parts of the range, before and after this column. If you can't find that key, you can just do it manually. You just add the dollar sign right before the column and right before the row number. But I highly suggest that you figure out where that F4 key is in your own keyboard, just so you don't have to do this manually. So once I press enter on my keyboard, nothing really changes over here, but I'm gonna make this second one smaller. So if I copy this table and I paste it over here, and then I change this number 1 for the number 2. Now it's working properly and we're not getting any errors. So this formula is ready, but I'm not gonna leave this second table here just yet. You can undo your changes by doing Control-C or Command-C on your keyboard if you already pasted it, or you can just select these columns over here, right-click and delete them. I deleted it because there is one thing that we're missing from this table. We're missing the scratching effect. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So whenever I check a box, I want the text to be scratched. So we're gonna do that with conditional formatting, and we're gonna need 3 separate rules, one for each of these columns, just so those rules are still working and adapting properly whenever we're copying and pasting this to create multiple tables. So the first rule is gonna be for the quantity column. So we're gonna select everything from cell G4 to G40. We're gonna click on Format, Conditional Formatting, and then in this option right here, Format Rules, we're gonna click on the drop down and we're gonna select Custom Formula Is at the very bottom of the options. And then we're gonna do equals. And what we're looking for is that whenever column F is checked, we want this effect to be applied. So we're just gonna use the very first row of our range, which is row 4. So in this case, if cell F4 is equal to true, then I want this formatting to be applied. And the reason I'm only using cell F4 is because my very first cell of my range is cell G4. So whenever I'm creating this rule, I'm thinking in terms of this very first cell, and then the rest is going to adapt accordingly. So I'm just gonna click on this fill color, and I'm gonna change the background to none. The text color, I'm just gonna pick this 5th gray from left to right, and then I'm gonna click on this strike through effect and I'm gonna have it become italic, and then I'm gonna click on done. So as you can see, whenever I check a box, this column is creating the scratching effect. So we're gonna have to repeat that for these other 2 columns individually. So I'm just gonna go through that again. I'm gonna select everything from cell H4 to H40. I'm gonna click on Format, Conditional Formatting. I'm gonna scroll down on these format rules all the way down to Custom Formula Is, and again I'm gonna do equals F4 is true, so equals F4 equals true. And again I'm just using this row 4 column F because I'm thinking in terms of the very first cell that I have selected in this range over here. And I'm gonna apply the exact same rules. None for the background color. Then I'm gonna do the 5th one from left to right. I'm gonna click on strike through, and then I'm gonna click on italic, and then I'm gonna click on done. And finally, I'm gonna do the same thing here. If you like, you can pause the video and try to do it yourself. If not, you can just follow along. So again, I'm gonna select this range, format, conditional formatting, custom formula, and then again, I'm gonna do equals F4 equals true. And I'm going to give it that exact same formatting options that I did before. Strike through, italic, and done. And if you highlight these 3 columns, you're gonna see your 3 rules over here. Your conditional format rules should look exactly like this. If you lost that sidebar, you just select this area. You don't have to go all the way down. You'll be able to see the rules applied even if you select only the first row. So I'm gonna click on Format, Conditional Formatting, and this is exactly what you should see. So they all have the same rule, but they're being applied to different ranges. And the reason why I didn't do all 3 columns at once is because I want to be able to copy and paste as many tables as I want, and I want them to all adapt so they're pointing at their own checkbox. If I were to select this whole thing all at once and then apply just one rule, it's gonna work for one table, but it's gonna get messed up whenever I copy and paste other tables. So I'm just gonna add some text over here to make sure it's working. And yeah, it's working fine. So now this individual table is ready, and I'm gonna go ahead and create 10 more by just copying and pasting. But before that, I'm just gonna make some room for it. I don't have enough cells. So the way you add columns is I'm gonna click on column K, and you can click and drag all the way to the very end, or you can click on column K, press shift on your keyboard, and then click on the very last column, and you're gonna select that range. So what I'm looking for is I want to add extra columns. So I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna click on insert 12 columns to the right. You might see a different number since I deleted some columns, but basically the number of columns that you select, it's the number of columns that you're gonna be able to add to the right or to the left. So I'm just gonna add that to the right, and then these new columns are still selected. So I'm just gonna take advantage of that, right click, add 12 columns to the right, and I'm gonna do that until I am able to see column BC, which are enough columns to fit my 10 tables. I know this because I already made it. Since we already know how big this is, we're looking for column BC. So once you see this one, it means you have enough space. First, you're gonna make sure column J is small, just so you don't have to go back and change it later, because you would have to change it on all 10 tables. So we're just gonna make sure it's small since the beginning, and make sure all of your sizes are exactly the way you want them, just so you don't have to go back later. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna select my entire table. So I'm gonna click on column F, and I'm gonna drag all the way to column J, and then I'm gonna copy. Then I'm going to click on column K. I'm going to press shift on my keyboard, and I'm going to scroll all the way to column BC without releasing shift, and I'm going to click. And that should select the entire range. If you're having trouble with that method, you can also just click on the first one and drag all the way to the last one, and then I'm going to paste. And since I did this by selecting this entire set of columns and not just the individual table, I'm actually also copying the width of my columns, which is extremely useful. And then I'm gonna go into each individual table and I'm going to change this number. So I'm gonna do 2, this one's gonna be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Very quickly, I'm gonna name every single one a different way just to test that it is working. So I'm gonna name them test 1, test 2. And those should be changed automatically. So if they all match perfectly, then you can move on. If not, you should go back and see what's up. So now I'm just gonna make this a bit bigger and bolder. 14. Bold. And then something I like to do with some of my templates is make sure that this is actually sticking at the top, and then this bar is actually sticking to the left. So if you look in here, this bar, it's always there, and then this header is always at the top. So the way you're gonna do that is you're gonna click on this third row right here, and then you're gonna click on view. You're gonna click on freeze, and you're gonna select up to row 3. So that's fixing our headers. And then you're gonna click on column D, you're gonna click on view, freeze, and then on the second area up to column D. So that's freezing this and the header. I'm just gonna make this a bit smaller, and we're gonna give this a title. So I'm just gonna select everything from cell A1 to D3, and I'm gonna merge it. And then let's call this maybe Asia 2023, and let's just make it bolder and then bigger, maybe bigger. Our titles are connected, but we are missing our progress bars right here. So as you may recall, whenever this changes, I also want that to be updated here. You can totally reference it manually, but I'm just gonna do it with a formula. So it's automated and you can learn another formula, but you could totally just do equals and then click here, and that's just gonna work perfectly. And you can do that manually for every single one, but let's do it with a formula. just so we can use one more. So we're gonna select this cell that has our temporary percentage and we're gonna delete it. And the formula that we're going to use is the Hlookup formula. So we're gonna do equals Hlookup. Then we're gonna open parentheses and we're gonna give it our search key, which is going to be this cell right here. So this is going to be our guide and it's gonna help us find our percentage based on whenever this number up here matches this number right here. So then we're gonna do a comma and we're gonna select our range. So that range is going to be everything from cell F1. I'm gonna click and drag all the way to cell BB2. Then I'm gonna do a comma and my index is going to be number 2. So this formula is going to be looking for this value on the very first row. And whenever it finds it, it's gonna give me the value of the second row. So this is row 1 and my value is going to be on row 2. Then I'm gonna do a comma and then it's not sorted, so I'm just gonna do a 0 or false, and then I'm just gonna close parentheses and I'm gonna press enter on my keyboard. So now that percentage is connected to the corresponding table based on this index right here. So if I copy that cell and I paste it right below, that formula is not going to work. It's not adapting properly because I am missing one step. You need to select the formula again. You click anywhere on this range, and what we need to do is we need to fix the formula to this range. So no matter where I'm pasting it, it's always going to be reflecting this range. So I'm gonna click on the key F4 on my keyboard, the one that adds these dollar signs right before the column and right before the row. And then this one just stays the same, and then I'm gonna press enter. So what I just did is I made sure that whenever I copy and paste this formula, it's always going to be pointing at this exact same range. And then this will adapt depending on where I paste the formula. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna copy this cell, and instead of pasting it directly, because if I paste it directly, I'm gonna mess up this border. So I'm gonna show you a trick. If you copy this cell, you select this range below, you can right click, select paste special, and then formula only. So as you can see, it's all changing according to whether this number matches this number. And if it does, then this is the number that's getting pulled into this cell right here. So let's just give it some formatting. Let's make it smaller by selecting that range, maybe font 8, and then I'm gonna make it bold and then italic. So now all we are missing is our progress bar, and this progress bar is just gonna be using this value. It's not connected to anything else. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take advantage of all the typing that we already did in here, and the formula is going to look exactly the same except for this value right here. So I'm just gonna select the whole thing, copy, and then I'm going to click on the cell where my progress bar should be, and I'm actually going to go into this formula bar up here, right next to this FX. I'm going to click there and I'm going to paste my formula. Whenever I do this, I prefer to paste it on this formula section just to make sure I don't mess up any formatting by pasting it directly on the cell. And then we just need to change this value so it's pointing to this cell right here. So I'm going to delete that F2 and I'm going to click on this very first cell that contains our first percentage, cell C7. Make sure you didn't get rid of the comma and then enter. Now that's moving according to this percentage, and we're gonna go ahead and copy that down here. So again, I'm gonna copy. We're gonna do that same trick. We're gonna select the range, right click, paste special, formula only, just so we don't get rid of our border, and everything is changing properly. Now there is one thing we're missing. Whenever the tables are empty, you're gonna see an error over here. So we're gonna fix that by clicking on this percentage cell F2, and we're going to add the if error formula at the beginning. So right after the equals, we're gonna do if error, open parentheses, and then we're gonna go all the way to the end. We're gonna do a comma, then we're gonna add 0%, close parentheses, and enter, and that fixes this one cell. It's not fixing this one here. That still has the error. What we're gonna do to fix it is we're gonna select everything from cell F2 to cell J2, and then we're gonna copy, and then we're gonna select everything from cell K2 to cell BC2 by clicking and dragging. And make sure you're also including this very last one because you're actually copying the table and the border to the right. So for this to work properly, you have to select the table and the border to the right from the second one to the very last one. So once you do that, you paste, and that fixed the whole thing. And I'm going to show you one more trick. If you want to change some formatting over here and you actually want that to be applied over here as well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do all of the formatting that we need on this very first table. So I'm just gonna go ahead and maybe add a white thin border to the right in this cell, and then white inner borders on this cell, inner borders, and then I actually want to add a border up here like this one. So I'm going to click on borders, I'm going to select this fifth gray from right to left, and then this second line, and I'm just going to give it a top border. And then let's make this background this second gray color. And then, as you can see, I actually also added this gray background over here. I just thought it looked cute. So if you want that as well, you can just go ahead and add that same background to this J column right here. So you're gonna click on the letter J, and then you're gonna give it your background. And once I have this very first table ready, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna select everything from column F to column J by clicking and dragging. And then I'm gonna click on this paint format button over here, and that's gonna make it highlight. So immediately after, what you have to do, and just watch before you actually do it, you have to select everything from column K all the way to column BC. And you have to do it by clicking and dragging without releasing, because the moment you release, the formatting is going to get applied. So I'm going to select column K, and without releasing, I'm going to drag all the way to column BC. And once I release, you're gonna see that that same formatting was applied to each of my tables without actually touching any of the values. So I'm just gonna delete these three columns right here. And then you can just add this background manually to the rest of the cells. If it's something you like, you can just click and drag. And I'm gonna add it all the way to row 41. And then I'm gonna give that same background to row 41. This is completely not necessary, but I think it makes it look prettier. And then to get rid of this, I'm gonna show you a trick. So if you click on row 42 and then you press Shift, Control, and down arrow on your keyboard, you're gonna select everything from that row till the very end. So you can go ahead, right click, and select Delete Rows. So now that makes it look a lot prettier. I'm just gonna make this taller. If you want to delete the content for every single one of these tables all at once, you can just select the entire table plus the border to the right. You make sure this is completely empty. Then you copy, and you can go ahead and just select this very first row all the way to this very last border. And we're including the border here because it's included here. So if you only select the first row and you paste, that's actually going to get applied to the entire table all the way down to your selection. So if I just select this up here all the way to the end and I paste, the whole thing was deleted. So whenever you want to start over, or you want to delete it, you can just do that. And then finally, I do not love this font, so I'm just gonna click on this square up here. That's gonna select the whole thing, and I'm just gonna change it to a different one. I might choose Play-Doh, and yeah, I like that better. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. And I would love to know in the comments if you found this to be too easy, too hard. And thank you so much for watching.